Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our next live stream. I'll be your producer for this session. Before we start, I do have some quick housekeeping. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. While we absolutely encourage engagement in the chat, we ask that you please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional, and on topic. Keep an eye on that chat. We'll be dropping helpful links and checking for questions for our presenters to answer live. Our session is being recorded. It will be available to view on demand right here on the Reactor channel. With that, I'd love to turn it over to our speakers for today. Thank you for joining.
Hey, my name is Jay Gordon.
And I'm Marco Hadi. Nice to meet you all.
Yes, thank you very much. Welcome to Vibe Coding on Azure Cosmos DB, build an AI app. Today we're going to build an application using Azure Cosmos DB as the heart of the app, as our database. Going to basically talk to our agent, build something interesting, and hopefully you learn a little bit about how to build applications with agent-based coding and how Azure Cosmos DB and the tooling fits in. From here, Marco, I want to hand it off to you to kind of give some context about Cosmos DB in general.
Absolutely, and I hope you're seeing the slide where I have.
But let's remind everybody first. Let's remind everyone first. Azure Cosmos DB Conf 2026 is coming up. Don't forget to register.
Fantastic.
We'll drop the link in the chat, but go for it, Marco.
Okay, so hey everyone. So when we think about building modern applications, whether it's for IoT or real-time personalization, gaming, mobile application backends, or any type of large-scale transactional systems, developers consistently run into the same challenges, right? So it's all about scalability, challenges with latency, and operational complexity. And this is exactly where Azure Cosmos DB comes in. So what is Azure Cosmos DB? At its core, it's a fully managed NoSQL and vector database designed for modern apps that need low latency, massive scale, and global distribution. So we are really talking about single-digit millisecond performance here, automatic scaling, and multi-region availability, everything built in. And so where we see Azure Cosmos DB customers using Azure Cosmos DB is really, there's a lot of use cases. You can build, for example, mobile and web app backends that need fast, scalable APIs and real-time user experiences. You can use Azure Cosmos DB for IoT and telemetry systems, ingesting massive streams of data. You can see Azure Cosmos DB being used for real-time personalization and recommendation engines. Also, high-throughput transactional apps, like in retail, booking systems, or gaming. And basically, any type of globally distributed apps where users are everywhere. And you get guaranteed performance and availability at any scale, with SLAs backing both latency and uptime. But what is very important here is really the developer experience. Cosmos DB as a NoSQL database removes a lot of traditional database friction. So first of all, you don't really need to manage the schema because everything is based on flexible JSON data. You basically essentially manage your schema inside your application code, which makes evolving the application and iterating on existing features super fast. Also, I used to be a DBA on a relational system. And so I got used to doing things like creating indexes on my data. With Azure Cosmos DB, you don't really need to worry about indexing because everything is done behind the scenes automatically. So there is no manual tuning needed when you get started with Azure Cosmos DB. Also, if we think about different languages and frameworks that you are using with Azure Cosmos DB, we have rich SDKs across all major languages, which include languages like Python, super popular with Azure Cosmos DB, Node.js, Go, .NET, Java, and so on. And one of the biggest things as well is that you don't have to manage capacity at all. Everything is taken care of for you. You can use the serverless and auto scale to manage capacity. So you really can move fast. You can iterate quickly, and you can start building and focus on building features, not infrastructure. One of the things that many enterprise developers also appreciate about Azure Cosmos DB is that it basically allows you to eliminate data silos. So Cosmos DB isn't just a database, it's part of a unified data estate. So it's very easy to, for example, bring operational data to Microsoft Fabric, which is the analytical database engine or analytical platform at Microsoft, which allows you to bring real-time insights on live application data to your analytical dashboards. And there's also a very seamless integration with Azure services. So this all means that your application data is immediately usable for analytics, reporting, and AI without building separate pipelines. And the fourth thing that I really want to talk about, and this is actually where things get really interesting, Cosmos DB is positioned as a unified AI database. So it allows you to store operational NoSQL data and also vector embeddings together in the same database. So you don't need a separate vector database to build AI solutions or agentic solutions, right? You can also use built-in vector search and hybrid search together. Some use cases are, for example, the RAG applications. And especially these days when we talk a lot about agentic apps and agents, so Azure Cosmos DB supports agent memory, session state, and contextual data. So instead of like stitching together multiple systems, Azure Cosmos DB becomes the data and memory layer for AI applications and agents. So today we are going to talk about how we are bridging AI together with coding. And this is kind of the key thing, because you can use Cosmos DB for traditional apps today, but the same data layer actually naturally evolves into powering AI scenarios. For example, the ones that I already mentioned, retrieval augmented generation or RAG apps, agent memory and reasoning, and also real-time decision systems. And beyond that, AI isn't just something that you add to apps. AI is now changing how you actually build apps. And this is where white coding comes in, and Jay is going to talk later about how to use AI to create these type of applications faster, not just run them. But before we go to Jay's topic, I'm going to share my screen just quickly and show how to create an Azure Cosmos DB account. There are obviously a lot of different ways of doing that, including Azure CLI, for example, which is a command line tool that you can install on your desktop and then connect to your subscription on Azure, and then just script everything easily. But I'm going to use Azure Portal. Hopefully you are able to see my portal. So when you go to Azure Portal, you just simply look for Azure Cosmos DB like this. And here it is, Azure Cosmos DB. There's an overview, and I just simply click Create and choose between the options that we have. This time we are using Azure Cosmos DB for NoSQL. And then in this project details, I'm going to give some things. I'm going to think that we are going to do something for development here. I'm going to use my existing, I thought I actually had an existing, let's create a resource group here, Reactor demo. And then Reactor
and like
data.
Marco said, this is kind of like easy mode. So you can watch while he's doing it, but this is kind of like easy mode. You're just using the portal. I'm sure you all have used the portal at some point if you're familiar with Azure. And what's great is that you can do this a little bit more programmatically. Like Marco said, you can use AZD, which is a great developer tool. bicep templates, Terraform, you name it. There's lots of options. But Marco, why don't you tell us a little bit where you're at this point?
Well, I'm at this point, I'm choosing the capacity mode. And honestly, I recommend serverless for any type of new workloads that you're trying to build or you're planning to build on Azure using Azure Cosmos DB, because then you would be only paying for what you use. Serverless is really great for, unpredictable traffic, prototyping, and even like, real production workloads. Super easy to use. And for some reason, I don't see the free tier option on this plate right now, but I would be choosing the free tier, which gives you basically certain amount of capacity of Azure Cosmos DB, as well as some storage, up to 25 gigabytes to start building. And then basically you just click create and you're good to go. So basically, this is a very quick introduction to Azure Cosmos DB, but I think instead of waiting until we have the database in place, Jay actually already has a database in place. So he has done through all this. And Jay is now going to take us through how modern development workflows and vibe coding really changed how we actually build on top of this. So Jay, over to you.
Cool, sure. All right, let's switch over to my screen. Thank you. So let's talk a little bit about vibe coding. And I kind of like to talk about musicians in this particular thing because I'm a little bit of a music guy. When you're working, you're kind of trying to use natural language prompts to create music. And then you're allowing your agent to steer the music in the right way. It's kind of the way I like to think about it. You're coming up with an idea of a song, you're humming it, and then you're humming it to the agent. And the agent's gonna be like, that's a good song, but you could use this riff, you could use that riff, you can make this change, you can add this little drum fill here. All these little things, you're going off vibes, and the agent's gonna help you by adding the layers, the polish, the things that you need. So let's keep going. I want to keep this real quick as far as slides are concerned. So one of the big parts is a code side by side with AI, so you're able to keep momentum moving. You're always moving forward, and that's a big part of having fast loops. You have a feedback loop that you can immediately act on and work with the agent to find problems. So let's say X is broken. Let's ask the agent, why is X broken and what we can do to fix it. So that quick feedback loop, it just helps you keep creative cycles moving quicker and quicker. And the thing that I love is that you can go from idea to application. And a lot of times when you're using something like Cosmos DB, context is extremely important. And so let's talk about our tool stack. We've got a lot to use. I know this is a big, big list. I hate putting lists out like this on slides, but let's just talk about our environment. We're going to use VS Code. We're going to build a Python Flask app. We're going to use the Azure Cosmos DB SDK for CRUD, queries, integrations, all those things. Hopefully, seamlessly, it'll work. We'll be using VS Code with GitHub Copilot Chat, the Cosmos DB Agent Kit, which I'll talk a little bit more in a second. We're going to use the Azure Cosmos DB extension for VS Code. That's so we can actually navigate what's in our database. We'll get to that. Azure MCP Server adds more context. Then we've got some other tools like GitHub for source control, Terminal for CLI, and actually what we're going to be working with is the Azure Cosmos DB Windows Emulator. There's a Linux emulator as well, but we'll focus on the Windows one. And what's really cool about that is all the things that we're going to be doing today, you can do as well. It's not going to cost you a dime. You just go ahead, you grab the emulator. We'll have links and stuff for you where you can find all this at the end. But now the other part of it is the user. It's custom instructions that we can come up with, different prompts, and then you're only limited by your creativity, your curiosity, and your imagination. So rather than just mention it, I want to show you a little bit more about what this agent kit is. And the agent kit basically teaches your AI coding agent Cosmos DB best practices. So around these different 11 categories, it started at 75 rules, and it's almost like over 85 at this point. We keep adding more and more rules. And what this is doing is helping you have an Azure Cosmos DB expert paired along with you as you're building your app. So I've talked a lot about this. I just want to do it. Now, your mileage may vary, and the person that's in the chat is very right. Your token limit is ultimately going to guarantee a little bit about what you can do and how much of it you can do. But today, I'm very lucky. I have unlimited tokens. I work at Microsoft, and one of the things I need are plenty of tokens. So some of this stuff will be very token heavy, obviously, but we'll at least have a good look at what we're working on. So one of the things we're going to be doing is we're going to be working out of a GitHub repo, and we're going to do it right out of my account. And I'm going to give you something to follow along with us the whole way around. So I can create my own GitHub repo, but why not let the agent do it? And so that's one of the things I want you to kind of understand here, is the agent can do just about every little bit of the work I want it to do. So it says I want to create a Reactor pets repository on my account. So it's going to go ahead, look what's in the account. It's going to ask me if I want it public. Yes, I want it a public. Any description, pets app. We'll get into that in a second. And so now it's just going to do me the favor of actually creating, initializing, and having our repo ready to go. So what we'll do is it'll go ahead and create it, and great. Now I want you all to be able to grab it yourself. So let's go ahead and drop this here in the chat. Oh, I'm not allowed to post links in the chat. Anyway, if you can, go back to my GitHub account. So you'll be able to see there's already in there. So GitHub, jdestro/ActorPets. It's a little bit of an easy way to do it. All right, cool. So we're going to be using some of these tools I talked about. One of them is going to be the Azure Cosmos DB Agent Kit. That's going to help provide some context to what we're doing. Installing it is really easy. We're just going to go here into the terminal. I'm going to drop this command, npx skills add Azure Cosmos DB. What it's going to do, it's going to go ahead and like a npm for installing JavaScript. It's going to go ahead and it's going to install the agent kit that we need. It's going to provide me with some options. So here we're kicking off. It takes a second, and it's going to actually clone the repo for it. And then you can see while I'm using VS Code, you can see that there's like 23 different types of agents that are supported. I just have it set up now for VS Code and Claude. So I'm just going to hit enter. It's going to ask me what's the installation scope, and I'm going to do it globally so it works for all my applications that I'm using in VS Code. Symlink, a single source of truth, a lot easier than having to link it every single time. And then it'll ask me to proceed with the installation, and I'll say yes. So now it'll start installing the skills, and these are all best practice skills. If we go ahead, let's take a look real quick. You can see all these markdown files are individual rules that you can look at that give best practices around Cosmos DB. All right, so we have
Jay,
our agent.
before you go on, so the best practices, they really matter, right? Because, you know,
Absolutely.
you can make really wrong decisions sometimes, you know, when you're doing data modeling or partitioning and things like that, right?
Yeah, and that's one of the things that the agent kit brings you is, like I said, those are different 11 types of categories that we can work with. All right, so let's go ahead and start building our app because we only have so much time. And I've got a prompt that I've kind of put together. So first, I want to create a Python Flask web app. So I'm just being direct with the agent. And I want it to have a front end that supports CRUD actions. I want it to set up a VM for Python because, you know, Python is the app, the language would be helpful with. I will zoom in a little bit I hope that's better. Let me know. Let me shrink the terminal a little bit. So I'm going to tell it to go ahead and install the VM and then make sure that you're using the virtual environment for Python. So now you can see it's already kind of come up with some ideas about what I want. So it's going to create the Flask app with the CRUD routes that we need. Then it's eventually going to create the front end. So it's going to handle all the HTML, the CSS, things like that. Then we're going to create our requirements that we're going to need. So those are all the modules that need to get installed. Right now, the requirements.txt, it's only Flask 3.1.1. We haven't really got that far. All right. Then after that, it's creating templates around, you can see here, it's quickly created like the HTML templates that we're going to need. And then it's actually started building our application. So you see this right here, Marco?
Mm-hmm.
So this is kind of giving an idea of what the agent thought of that prompt. And so let's go and look at that prompt. I gave a pretty simplistic prompt that wasn't very prescriptive. It gave just enough information to get us this. So it wants to know if it can initialize the virtual environment. Say yeah. And so while it's doing that, Marco, an in-memory database really doesn't make sense long-term, does it?
No, because you want to persist, obviously, the data onto a persistence level. Can you tell a little bit more about the in-memory data here?
Yeah, so in this case, we've told it that we want it to be able to do CRUD actions. And so what it's decided to do for right now is just store the in-memory information in our, or I should say, our information that we're going to be keeping in memory rather than storing it in long-term storage. That's not really going to scale. We can't just use things in memory here. And everybody, just so you know, let's show you that I'm actually doing this live. So if you're following along, and I ask my friends from the Reactor, if you mind pasting the link to the repository, I'll get it for y'all again. Right here. Actually, no, that's not it. We'll worry about it later. I'll get you the repo, but if you're following along, it's JDestro, then Reactor Pets. Anyway, so now it's actually finished the very, very base of getting our app run. And so it's told me that it should be running on 5,000. It's not. So let's tell it, start the app. Because like I said, if we're not super familiar with all the different things that it's put together, maybe we're a first-time developer or whatever, we can basically tell the agent to do all the different steps for us. So now it's running the app. Let's take a look.
So Jay, just a gut reaction here. You know, I have a very strong DBA background, and all the coding that I did, like in my previous life, was really stored procedures. I'm not like an app developer, but it looks like, you know, and I know you're going to show much more, but it looks like even I could be able to build like a new app, web app, like, you know, with this tool, with this tooling, and, you know, make it super interesting and even AI.
And so what we could do next, Marco, is like what I'm doing is showing about how you can iterate upon your prompts. So I gave a very, very basic prompt. Kind of what I will refer to as like just a baseline. It's like, I just want an app to do this. Now I actually want to provide a little bit more context. And so that's what this is all about. It's context, giving more information. So now I've told it that I want it to make this a pet adoption web app. I want users to be able to browse pets, submit adoption applications, and track application status in real time. So that's a really cool part of this, is that we are able to make use of the change feed built into Azure Cosmos DB, which allows us to get real-time updates on what things are changing in the database without having to query it constantly. Basically a feed that just says, this is what's changed, this is what's updated, this is what's deleted. We're able to kind of get that constant. So let's see what our agent's done so far. So the agent has recognized that we need to do something like add Flask login. We need to update our requirements. Why? Because we're adding more pip modules that we're going to need. Our agent is actually going to completely rewrite our application. So you can see here we've got app.py, which is the base, the very, very base of our application. We haven't split up things into different modules or components. We've kept everything in one single spot. But you can see now it's created some tasks, and it'll structure still with the in-memory dictionaries. Why? Why do you think that is, Marco?
Well, it probably gives you a better developer experience, because it's caching all the data locally, right?
So it is, but the thing is, and you can see there's so much information. It's made so many decisions for me, like server sent events, all this stuff. It's providing me with so much output that sometimes it can be a little overwhelming. But we've got 4 to-dos, and our app is basically going to run these tasks. So it's going to rewrite app.py for the adoption workflow. So how each step of actually going through a pet to eventually adopting or applying for that pet, then getting an update. So kind of creating a workflow within our actual Python application. So now the next step, what is it doing? It's just updating the HTML templates. And then after it's going to update, it wants me to run a PowerShell script so it can install Flask login. That's part of the modules that we have here. If I'm moving fast, let me know. And let me say hello while I can. I want to say hi to Ken. I want to say hi to Hassan and everyone else that's watching. We appreciate it. There's some great people that really care about this community. Those are a few of them, so thank you all. All right, so it's going ahead and updating our HTML again. It's going to go through this whole process, and it's going to remove some unneeded items because we've restructured everything. We've given it a little bit more detail on what this app's going to do, how it's going to do it, why it's going to do it. So it'll update our requirements based on what we need, and then it will restart the application. So while it's doing that, Marco, I want to talk to you about like what the agent kit's going to do next.
Yeah.
So
what's going on?
So I'm going to ask the agent to be able to create a database for me, because I need a database, because if I'm going to have this at some point as a long-term production application, I am going to need to manage the data a little bit better than keeping it at an in-memory store. I'm not going to put it in some sort of static file like JSON and have to go in and modify it every single time. That's not really going to work. So what I've done is I've put together a pretty large prompt. And before I smack enter, I'll share, talk about it. We need a database for local development. Well, what does that mean? It means I'm going to run the Cosmos DB emulator. It's going to be a little hard to see, but it is right down here. It is an emulator. You can go and download it pretty easily. Let me show you it here. You just go over to our documentation. There'll be a link for this. And it's a next, last. We have a Docker's window version and a Docker Linux version. There should be another version, a more updated version that's coming. You can see that we have a preview version of our vNext Linux one. That's going to be able to give you support across, say, Apple, which has been one of the issues, like CPUs. You know what I mean, Marco? Like having support for, say, Intel CPUs, issues with the silicon chips for Apple. We're working to make sure, so we're adding some additional functionality. I would like
that vNext is actually, it's coming pretty soon, I think, within the next few months.
So it's going through, and it needs me to allow it to go ahead and start the app. I made everything a little bit harder to see. Sorry, everybody. Let me collapse the to-dos. And so it's going to go ahead and restart the app. Okay, so let's just copy it. Let's head back to the browser.
So Jay, while you're doing that, just a question about the emulator. So does it
Sure.
basically have all the features of Azure Cosmos DB proper, the managed database service?
Yeah, for the most part, you're going to get a fairly similar experience. I have the emulator up here somewhere. Here we go. So this is a portal that you get when you start the actual emulator. It's just a go into Windows, type in Azure Cosmos DB emulator, start it, and that's it. It's just an MSI that gets installed. You'll have access to being able to have quick starts for all these different languages and tutorials, code samples, documentation. So you can do all this local and development. So let's get back to our app. You can see, as I just showed you, that the base of our app was created with just those couple of prompts. But right now, I really can't do much with it because I can't really apply for one of these animals because none of my information is going to get stored anywhere. So that's where this prompt comes in, and we tell it we want our database to have the ability to have flexible schemas. What if there are different types of animals that we want to add, and they have something about them that we need to be able to have as maybe part of our schema? If we were using a relational database, we'd have to add it as we'd have to migrate our database to the new schema version.
Yeah, it's like always like updating the tables, adding columns and referential integrity and things like that. So it's pretty complicated. It takes a lot of time.
Yep. So what we're going to do is tell our agent to we're giving it some hints, but here's where the agent kit kind of does its job, is that it looked with the language that I provided. We need a database for local development, check. It should support flexible schemas, check. Low latency reads, check. Scale globally later, yes, because right now we're doing everything local. We want to make sure that our application actually creates the databases and the containers that we're going to need to actually store our data. Then I'm going to say, don't add any imports or features that you haven't actually put in the requirements, because we won't want it to just go through it. So now let's take a look at what I was talking about as far as the agent kit is concerned. So after I gave that particular command, it went through and looked at the Azure Cosmos DB agent kit and looked at all the different skills that were required. Let's take a look. And so you can see it went through these skills and said, okay, well, I need to be able to use a singleton client for this. I need to make sure that I'm using the SSD, or I should say the SDK, and configuring the emulator correctly for SSL. Then we're able to look at the partition query patterns. So making sure when we're actually doing our queries, they're most efficient. Query point reads, making sure that we have some sort of like logic around using those or not using those. How our model should look. So our discriminators, partition and high cardinality for the type of partition key we need. And so now it's gone ahead and it's made some decisions. It made a decision that it's going to have a container named pets with the partition key species. It's going to then browse all the pets, get the pet by ID, but it's actually made a decision here that /ID is so the agent kit's going to go through this, and it's actually going to have a conversation with itself to make sure that it's picking what's right for the scenario. So we can see there's another container it's decided to create for users, another container for applications, and you can see each one. The agent kit has selected this partition key for me. I didn't pick it. All right, let's go ahead, and while that's working, let's check us in so that you can see that what I'm doing, I'm actually doing live. All right, so let's sync those changes. Cool, you should be able to see those coming through if you're on the repo. So now it, looking at all those best practices, sorry, mouth moving too fast. All right, and so now we need to actually install more of our requirements pip modules. And so in this case, we want to actually install the SDK for Azure Cosmos DB. And one of the things that our agent kit is going to do is make sure it's the latest version. So we'll go into requirements. You can see that Azure Cosmos 4.9.0 is in there. And so now it's actually going to create the module within our Python application that's going to be able to establish database client connections and then let us do our CRUD operations right through this. So this is configuring how the database is actually going to work alongside. So we've got some questions in here while this is running. Hassan says he doesn't always use AI agents, but when he does, he uses the Azure Cosmos DB Agent Kit. I like it. Does Flask support asynchronous function calls? I believe it does. If there's a better Python expert in here, please let us know. The cert from the emulator. If you've been watching what I've been doing, one of the things that actually was part of this was that the agent kit recognized I was using the SSL self-signed certificate within this application. So it went ahead and made configurations. So it may have already copied over the cert. It could just be skipping that portion, but yeah. And yes, like Hassan said, it does support vector policies. You can use this to test as much as you possibly can. And it's those Docker images of the emulator are actually really great for those of you who may be doing CI/CD testing, all that stuff. And we'll talk a little bit about testing as we get further. So let's take a look at what our agent has done. Our awkward registration check. So it's thinking. It's thinking, and then it's making changes to our app. So like I said, it went through our agent kit and made decisions around the singleton client, emulator, SSL config, the point reads proper partitioning keys. Then it rewrote our app py. You can see all these changes. And here's a really good part is that we see our in-memory stores, that's gone. And it's actually showed me right here how it's gone ahead and changing it. We've got little emojis for our different types of species. Let's keep moving along. We can update the pet browsing routes. You can see how it changed that. So you can see that I haven't really written a piece of code yet. You know, Marco? Like I haven't actually said, come up with a definition of what a variable is or set up routes or anything like that. I've basically been letting the agent make all these decisions. Now, I want to put something say something very clear. The code that we're generating today, it is not meant to be in production. It simply should not be in production. Why? Because this is just some vibe coded POC things that I've come up with. And it hasn't gone through security checks to make sure that we are not leaking any of this private data, because we're asking people to register. You know, Marco, I get enough of those breach emails.
That was actually going to be my question, would I be able to go to production with this? But sounds like it's not. Are there any limits in terms of the AI generated code at this point, though? We're building a prototype, right?
Yeah, and so the big limitations are sometimes best practices for individual parts of what you're building. So it says that it's finished and it's running our app. We'll get back to that in just a second, Marco. Let's take a look. Okay, so let's see. All right, we can log into apply.j@go.com, any password. And now you can see I've logged in, and I can go ahead and fill out this to adopt Buddy. But there's some more parts of this that I'd like to do. I want to actually seed it with pets that I know need to be adopted. And to do that, I'm going to go ahead and ask the agent to create a seed script for me. So let's seed the site with about 12 pets. We'll give them sequential ID so that we're actually be able to track this long term. We want to give names, locations, ages, breeds, descriptions, and what dates it was listed. And then if I want to run the script multiple times, I want it to use upsert rather than just write. And then eventually I want to create some placeholder SVGs for these pets, because they're our friends and we want them to have some sort of representation there. So now what is it going to do? It's probably, I'm going to take, yes, it's going to create a Python script. And a Python script is going to be able to generate some JSON. And then that JSON will eventually get imported into the database, and that will be what's seeding. So,
so you
first,
don't need to have like a sample data set. You can just generate the test data automatically using AI here.
Yeah, I mean, I've given it like some background and ideas on what I'd like it to build.
Yeah.
All those intimate details, I'm letting the agent make those decisions, and I'm letting those decisions be influenced by outside context reference. And in this case, the outside of the agent context reference is one, our agent kit that we've talked about a few times. I have the Azure MCP server configured so that we have Azure best practices. And wow, a lot is going on. It's added all sorts of pictures of our animals. So now we can see what's going on. But I want to get back to what you were talking about with security, Margot.
Yeah, security is very important for everyone, right?
So one of the things that we made sure of when we built this is to ensure that we have our user login information encrypted at rest, and using a hash in order to actually get that information back and forth over the client. That's been built into this. It's part of best practices.
And we are using strong encryption, obviously, very strong. Yeah.
And we can even ask, like, tell me about the encryption for the app. We can ask the app directly, or the agent directly, and it'll give us that information. So I can either continue to, let's let this finish up and then take a look at it. But like, I can continue running this app with just Python, whatever, or I can use something like Unicorn, and Unicorn will actually start the app and then restart it if there are changes to the actual application. So if we make something to like the .env file that needs to be changed. And see, that's a thing that I've noticed already that we need to improve, is that there's no .env file for our application. So there's none of our like username, password, things like that are being stored anywhere that, isn't going to get checked in. So it looks like it finished building what we were. Yep, it's going to just start it the way I was saying, like we don't want to long term. But let's go ahead and go back to the front end. And you can see now we've got all these little animals in our app. Now, how do I know that's really in there? Well, the best way to actually find out is to go into the Azure Cosmos DB extension for VS Code. It's as simple as just going into extensions, then installing it, and then going to the Azure portion of the extensions here. You'll see Azure Cosmos DB accounts, local emulators. All I have to do is click this. I can say I want to connect. Don't warn again. 8081 is the default port number for the emulator. And then you can see it just adds it. And now we can see that there are these databases that I've created for this app. I think Reactor Pets was, or Pets Now. I think Pets Now was an app I was working on earlier. I just forgot to delete it. But if you go here and you go to Pets, so we're in the container. So the hierarchy is the actual emulator to the actual database to the containers that house the items. And so you can see here's information about Buddy. So let's go back to this app. Here's Buddy. Here it says he's 3. Just to show you that this works, I'm going to go to 4. I'm going to save it, refresh it. Now Buddy's 4.
And it automatically updated on the web application because of change feeds.
Yep. Not even because of change feeds. This was simply because it got automatically updated because I went directly to the database, went to the actual document in the database, and was able to save it right there. So now I'm basically setting up the app to start using something. So it's actually said to me, we could use GUnicorn for Unicorn's workers, but it's Linux only. So it's going to give it a shot now to start and installing Unicorn. So that's, like I said, it's a way to actually start the application, keep it running. If it fails, it restarts it. And if there are modifications, it will let you know and refresh the application. So it's gone ahead. Okay, so here's another one of those fun things that you can find out. It already was running as 5,000 or on port 5,000, and it's actually in use by the Flask dev server. So we want to tell it to kill it and then allow. So it's actually asking me, can I run this kill process command? I said yes. So it's just going in a PowerShell and stopping it. So now you can see it killed the old processes, and now I wanted to run within my virtual environment the app. So you can see this time it worked. So let's go back to our app. You can see still running as expected. So now let's log in and let's say j@go.com. Any password will work. Oh, and why didn't it work? Because I already created that user. So let's just do pizza. And okay, I guess pizza is not a great password. And let's go to Luna and let's apply to adopt Luna. So let's say j@co 555 555 5555 123 Fun Street. Why do you want to adopt Luna? I love her. And what if my pet experience? I got dogs. I got dogs, everybody. All right, we'll click submit application. So now the real-time aspect of it is this getting updated. So if I want to, I can go to my applications, and this information is updated real time. Now, I haven't put up a back end to actually make these changes yet, but that's part of what our future iteration would look like. Okay, cool. So we've gone ahead, we have created our app, we've created more information about how, or I should say, we've created a database to store the information that's picked up. And so now we want to do a little bit of additional refinement. We want to have it have an apply to adopt button, and on the pets card, we want the application number and a track status button. So the track status is where we'll have our change feed put into use. So let's go ahead and smack it. Let's make sure that there's no filtering, that we can see all the available pets that are there at the time. And to go back to our code, like I said, right now, pretty much everything is in app.py. And Cosmos DB Pi, like I said, pretty much for the data layer. If we wanted to break this out into separate modules, we could. And this is a thing that we're going to tackle before we finish here today. All right. So let's make sure there's a few other things we can do, but we're limited on time. But let's say we should keep secrets in the .m file. Create that and a sample. Make sure there's a git ignore so we don't check it in for our pip modules, because those are things we don't. So I'm just putting that in. And so it's going to, while it does the other process, it's going to actually queue up this one as well. And it can use things as sub-agents if you want, where it can run specific tasks in parallel, and you don't really have to. So if an agent that's been set up has sub-agents, you'll be able to basically reduce how much work your agent is going to be doing on its own. So you can see it went ahead and updated our environment information so that we no longer are keeping that info here. So we're going to tell it, make sure our secrets are not hard-coded into the data layer. Oh, wait. I didn't even have to do that, Marco, did I? Oh, no, it's still building it. It's still doing it. So let's figure out if it made it. So it shows here what our Flask secret key is, but it doesn't look like it updated this. So I guess I was wrong that it didn't do it automatically. So let's tell it. Like I said, that's the whole point of this tight feedback loop, is being able at each point of what we're doing to be able to make changes. So it recognized what it was doing, and you can see, so remove the hard-coded emulator key. Also, the endpoint shouldn't be hard-coded. And that's another part of this, because if our endpoint shouldn't be hard-coded, our secret should never be hard-coded. These are things that definitely should be separate parts. So now we're required. So everybody, just to get you, like I said, checking in, 10 mins left. Cool. So Marco, we've been at this for what, about 40 something minutes?
Yeah.
And we've got an application that for the most part is working. We can do some other things. And so one of the things I was thinking about and advanced is, let's get really deep into it. Let's add an AI chatbot to the site. We'll use Ollama with a local model and install it if it's needed. We're going to use Qwen 2550 and pull it with the Ollama pull. The chatbot needs to be answer questions about like the pet's availability, info about the pets. We need to set the model name in env, and then we also want to make sure, yep, we want it to pull data from Cosmos DB. So let Cosmos DB be part of the chat for answers on pets and status. So I doubt this is going to complete because I've got a lot of things that I've asked it to do. But I basically told it at this point, take our Reactor Pets app and let's add a chatbot to it. And what it's going to do is going to see if Ollama is on my machine. It is. Then it's going to pull that particular model. It's going to grab the manifest. And then eventually what will happen is I'll have the ability to then wire it all up so that our app, you can see it's pulling the manifest, our app will be able to use this. So now it's going to pull the model. It's going to list what models are available. So all this is stuff, to be honest with you, Marco, top ahead, it would have taken me a while to figure out on my own.
Totally.
I would have had to read through all of it.
Yeah. I mean, think about all the documentation that you need to go through to figure out, like, yeah.
And that's one of the things that we're actually, so you can see it's actually also updated my environment. So both the sample that I'm going to be using and the production one. Now, why is this stuff here in sample? This is a well-known default key and password, so I'm not too worried about that. If it were a real production app, I wouldn't even have this information in here. You know what I would be doing, Marco? I'd be using Entra, and we'd be using RBAC in order to actually set up our app. So it looks like our agent is going ahead up and setting up additional routes to go ahead and add our chatbot. So let's go ahead and take a look where we are, if there's any changes. Nope, not yet. It's got to add the actual widget to the template. So let's give it a second. And while it's doing this, I want everybody to remember that all of this is available for you to do on your own without having a ton of experience writing code. The whole point of being able to use these agentic coding tools is to be able to really help you, whether you are a long-term experienced developer or someone that simply is just dipping their toes in. This is here to help you become more effective, give you more skills. I like using this as a training exercise. How much do I know about the code that's actually been produced? I think that that's one of the things I love, because like you, Marco, like I didn't come from a developer background. I knew enough like code to write to be dangerous, especially around like scripting. writing Ruby for things like chef templates. But the thing that I never really got was too deep into was writing full-blown applications by hand. I wasn't there. And so one of the things that I've really kind of taken to heart while using these agentic coding tools is kind of picking up things that I didn't really learn and in my previous background. And now I'm able to kind of pick up, I can say I want to create something specific, and I kind of have a better understanding of like, all right, so this is an array. This is the array that we're going to be using within here with information about the different species in the images. Some of this could get broken up into other functions and modules in our application. But for right now, this is a demo. Okay, so it's saying that our chat is working and pulling live pet data. There's
Okay.
our
Let's see.
chatbot.
There
Let's
it
see
is.
let's see if it's working. Tell me about Buddy. Whoa,
Oh,
it does work.
yeah,
Certainly, Buddy is an available dog with a friendly. So we added AI. AI generated AI for us.
that's pretty cool. That's amazing. I'm gonna try. I have like a lot of like ideas how I'm going to apply this information and these tools in my personal projects. So thank you for showing that.
Absolutely.
We still have like a few minutes left, I guess. So
Sure.
anything else you want to show, or should we close?
So I'm gonna basically say end of. We'll commit that this is the last part of our session, and then we'll just kind of close up. But you can see here all the code here. Yeah, you're right. Metal Machines dictionaries. Yes, you got it right. So we've gone ahead and we've put our app in there, and in our repo, you all can start using it as much as you like. Let me go ahead and let's get us to the end. Get you to the resources that you'll need. I'll give Marco some space to kind of close things out. So let me go ahead and share from this slide. It always goes this way. Every time let's get us back all the way to them. So the agent kit helped us a lot. It got us to have our better answers for when we actually put together our demo. You can see we had our front end, our back end, our database, our real time, and then our validation that could be done. The other thing that we could have done is we could have told it to create unit tests. We just really didn't have the time right now. But if you want to get resources on what we talked about today, what I suggest is go ahead, take a screenshot of this, reverse the video, or just take a picture with your phone of that QR code, and it'll take you to all these resources. I will share the repo if I will go ahead and ask that our studio producer shares that with us. It'll be jdestro / I believe it's Reactor Pets is the name of, so I can't post links in here, but you can go ahead, and if you want to go to that GitHub for the repo, that's where you can find it. It'll also, that QR code and that link, that redirects to my gist, but you can find my repo if you need it. Marco, you were the host last year, but this year I'll be the host, and we're going to have.
Yeah. So guys, please register to the 6th annual Azure Cosmos DB Conf on April the 28th. It's free for everyone. We have lots of interesting and exciting content there. Hosted. We have Microsoft speakers and also community speakers, and they share their findings and share what sort of like exciting scenarios they're doing and solutions they're building with Azure Cosmos DB. Lots of best practices, lots of like useful information. And obviously, there's a lot of like AI app development related content. You will get real world guidance. And as part of this, we also have a skilling challenge. So that will be an exciting thing. Do we have a slide about the skilling challenge
Yep.
here? But
So-
basically, yeah.
Certificates, free, 100% paid for, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. So you can complete the skills challenge. It's basically a series of like curated learning paths for you, and you will be able to then enter the competition that allows you to win a Azure Cosmos DB Developer Specialty Certification Exam voucher. So super useful for your professional career.
Yeah. So if you went ahead and ran through this, there's a form you fill out at the end. You just give us some information, and then you will be, if you've completed the skills challenge, you'll get a free certificate to, or I should say, a free disc. Let me try this again, Marco. You get a voucher to take the test for free. And how can you complain about that? You can get a certified. You can get a little badge for your LinkedIn. Everybody will know you're a Cosmos DB expert, just like the aging kit is.
Exactly.
Yeah, we've got to get the aging. We got to get the aging kit certified. I think that's the next big step. I guess, Marco, we can see if there are any questions, and if not, then we can roll on.
I think we pretty much covered everything. Lots of great feedback, great questions. Thank you everyone for joining us. And this will be available on demand as well later on. So you will be able to watch the demo, and if you had problems seeing the screen, so maybe make the screen a little bit bigger. Thank you everyone.
And remember,
thank you, Jay.
Take the survey. If you haven't yet, make sure you follow up with that survey. We want to know if you enjoyed our session today. So
absolutely.
With that, Marco, I can't wait to see you when I'm in Redmond.
Yay!
And being able to catch up for Azure
Yeah,
Cosmos.
see you at campus. Yeah, it will be fun.
So from Brooklyn, New York to Washington, where you are, Marco, I want to say goodbye, and everywhere else, wherever you are, thanks for joining us today.
Have a great rest of the day or evening.
Bye now.
Thank you all for joining, and thanks again to our speakers. We're always looking to improve our sessions and your experience. If you have any feedback for us, we would love to hear what you have to say. You can find our survey link on the screen or in the chat, and we'll see you at the next one.